Next person, first of all, I think there's some context here. I've never, if you asked me a few years ago what the office of Secretary of State was, I don't think I'd be able to tell you. I would probably say, well, isn't that what, is that Rex Tillerson or is that, John Kerry? But there's actually a constitutional crisis going on in South Carolina. We don't know, is the governor the most powerful person in the state or is the Secretary of State the most powerful person? But here to address some of that, to talk about his campaign, is Mr. Nelson Faerber.
All right.
My name is Nelson Faerber. I'm a candidate to be Secretary of State. And just to give you a roadmap for what I'm going to talk to you about today, I'll briefly touch on what the Secretary of State's office does. We'll talk about whether that office should be appointed, and if it's not appointed, should there be term limits? And then if I'm elected, what would I do in this office that's different from what the incumbent's doing? So some new technology and having an entrepreneur focus. So we start from the top. What does the Secretary of State's office do? Well, the most important function of this office, if you ask me, is its responsibility to business constituents. It's the office that a person goes to if they're going to start a new business. It's business filings. So absent the Department of Commerce, the most important office that a person would go to related to business and government is the Secretary of State's office. And so if you're going to start a small business or if you're an entrepreneur, the first place you go to after talking with your family is the Secretary's office. So they'll help you form an LLC, or if you need to do any incorporations, an LLP, any entity structure for your business. Now, absent that, you follow to the next most important aspect of the office, and it would be secure transactions, UCC filings. It's also responsible for notaries. It's responsible for nonprofits, 501c3s. It's responsible for trademarks. So it's, in total, it's citizen services. It's different than its federal counterpart, which would serve to explain why Tyler had no idea what this office was responsible for. Now, is an office like this, should it be an elected office? Or should it be an appointed office? Should it be something that the governor appoints into this position? Now, the question hinges on what's the best way to achieve accountability. And reasonable minds may differ. I believe that the best way to achieve accountability for this office would be if it's appointed. And so if I'm elected into this office, I would advocate for the governor to make this an appointed position at the advice and consent of the Senate. And the reason why is I believe there's greater accountability. If the person's not achieving their job, if they're not doing what they need to do to keep this office in line with other states, the governor can fire them at the drop of the hat. And so in my opinion, in my heart of hearts, the best way for us to achieve accountability in this office, to make sure we're serving our state's business constituents the best we can, is if this was an appointed position. So if elected, my goal would be to make this not even an elected office anymore. But that would have to require a constitutional amendment. We would actually have to put it up to the voters to change the Constitution. And if that does not work, if they decide that this should remain an elected office, at that point we have to decide whether or not it's appropriate for this office to be term limited, just like the governor is term limited. It's a constitutional officer, just like the governor would be. And so if the governor is going to be term limited to 2 elections, I believe this office should also be term limited to 2 elections. I believe that because I think it's a conservative cause. I believe with term limits, you're able to end things like corruption. The longer a person stays in office, it's more likely that a special interest may get under their skin and maybe start pulling some strings, and all of a sudden they'd be serving special interests, not the constituents that elected them. And so you kind of cut the head off of that by term limits. It also helps with complacency. If there's fresh blood coming into an office at least every 8 years, you spur something that could otherwise be stagnant, but may not be moving forward. So if this does not get appointed, I would advocate that we actually make this a term-limited office. And if it doesn't become a term-limited office, I would term limit myself to 2 terms. That's how important it is to me that we keep having fresh blood and let new and innovative ideas keep cycling through this office to better serve our state's business constituents. Now, if I am elected, the most important thing that I can do for this office is to improve technology for our state's business constituents. Today, we meet a bare minimum standard. You can create a business in the Secretary of State's office, but it will take time. Today, it could take 3 weeks. If there's a holiday, it could take 4 weeks. And in my mind, all of you are running a business, and if you had to deliver a product and it took you 3 weeks to do it, you'd go out of business. It's because you have to compete. When has government ever competed for citizen services for you? So in my mind, with today's automated technology, it would be a simple fix for us to be able to allow you to create a business, not in 3 weeks, but in a day. Just using technology that we already use and benefit from as consumers. That's how important it is to me. And then if we had a better entrepreneur focus, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Arkansas. Let's just be Arkansas. They do a really good job of focusing on entrepreneurs and helping them get to where they want to go, helping them live their dream. One thing they do is they have an online resource where if you're going to create a small business, they don't provide legal advice, but they help provide definitions of what an LLC is, what a sole proprietorship is, what an LLP is. And then if you're going to have employees for your business, they'll orient you to get an EIN number so that the IRS will be able for you to account taxes for your employees. And then if you're going to be a domestic LLC, if you're operating entirely within the state of South Carolina, they'll show you, there are some drop-down menus, what is the city regulations that will apply to you, what permits may you need. Now that's a service that you see in other states providing to their business constituents. But today that service isn't available in South Carolina. So I think that's a focus that we should emphasize for entrepreneurs and small business owners. And then you take it a step further, that can be an online focus if you have in-person resources. And my favorite example is if you were to go into a hospital, oftentimes they have what's called patient advocate. Now, if your doctor wasn't providing you the service that you felt like you needed, you could go to the patient advocate with your complaint, and they could help provide a resolution for your issue. What if an office in the government had a similar, a small business advocate, where if you're experiencing red tape, which we see in the Secretary of State's office, today I have constituents saying that they're mailing $3 checks because they can't pay that online, which to me does not make sense. But if you start hearing about this red tape that's happening in the Secretary of State's office, and you have this advocate on behalf of the entrepreneur, that person can take in the problems and on aggregate understand what is it that we need to fix. And then they can go to the secretary and say, we have this problem and I have 3 solutions to fix it. And all of a sudden we start serving business constituents in a manner that would be on par with our other states. Because today we're meeting the bare minimum standard. And I think if we just take the baby steps, after a few years we can start leading. And that's what I want to do. And I hope I can earn your vote and your support in my effort in becoming the next Secretary of State. Thank you very much for having me today.
Time for any questions?
Absolutely.
One thing I'm doing is, some of you may have noticed I'm over by the computer. I promise I'm not being rude and like playing backgammon or something like that. Random game. But we're trying a new thing. We're doing live streams of our county party meetings. So this is the first time we're ever doing this. So I'm trying to see if anyone's commenting any questions or anything like that. But does anyone here have a question for Mr. Faerber? No, his office.
So you run as a Republican?
Yes, sir.
Against who?
There are 4 Republicans in this race. They're all hardworking, I would say qualified candidates. There's the incumbent, Mark Hammond. He's been in office for 16 years. There's a state representative, and then a gentleman from Spartanburg who is he's in service. He's involved in technology. And so I would be the 4th candidate. Yes, sir.
Where are you from?
I was born in Atlanta, and when I was playing high school football, I was recruited by Coach Sweeney to play at Clemson. I have to be careful where I say that. Some people don't want to talk about it. But yeah, I was recruited to play football at Clemson. If you're familiar with the area, they say there's something in the hills. It's true. And I met my wife there, and so yes, sir. I'm currently living in Greenville, South Carolina.
Where?
Greenville.
Yeah, that agree.
Any other questions?
Okay. How old are you?
32. Yes, sir. I spent the last 4 years in the Air Force. I went to law school before that. So sometimes people don't think I'm as old as I am. But, I guess that's
So what would you do differently exactly than what the current guys do?
Yes, sir. So the secretary is currently Mark Hammond. He's been in office for 16 years, which we would see as kind of the entire internet revolution. And so if you look at what the office is today in terms of technology, and you were to compare that to our other states and how they've progressed and how technology has progressed, and we see as a consumer and we benefit from, we're really just lagging behind in technology for our people to be able to create businesses. And so there's ways in which we can implement new technology so you can create businesses faster if you need to. One of the things that we can do with technology that we see other states doing dating back to 2012 with technology is something called e-notary services, where you can use your computer or your phone, and with that you can actually get your document notarized on the internet, right? And so that's just technology that we're seeing other states use, but today we're not really benefiting from that in South Carolina. So I focus heavily on technology, and then have a focus just on entrepreneurs, making sure we're serving them to the best of our ability. Because in my heart of hearts, if this is the first place a small business goes, we should be welcoming them and helping them as they start this journey into a business. Because we know how difficult that is. And if there's anything we can do to help, I think we should.
Yeah, back in the late '80s, Clemson had a very good program, small business, welfare, business plan, the corporation, is that fall under the secretary, or is it a different program?
I believe it may be different, and I haven't heard of it. I'll do some research to see if there's any correlation between that program and the Secretary of State's office.
It was really good.
Good to hear.
I think we have time for just one more.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your service.
I appreciate you. I know today is a special day. I think there's some Vietnam vets in here, and I know there's a special day for you guys, so I appreciate you. It gives me chills.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Well, and I also want to say to Mr. Faerber, I almost went to Clemson. But I think I like Winthrop. And also our team, Winthrop's football team is undefeated right now. Just putting that out there.